shine on Happy Camper Life. We're loving, living, and learning online on Happy Camper Life.
Welcome to My Camp Podcast, brought to you by Happy Camper Live and our special series called My Camp Lives On. And this series is about camps that are no longer operating, but of course had memories for the thousands of kids and staff that pass through their gates and down their camp's roads. And today's guest, please introduce yourself, Henry, if you would.
Yeah, I'm Henry Schuyler, with the Wind alumnus, camp that I grew up in. If it hadn't been for Witherwind, I don't think David would be talking to me today.
Right. So Henry Schuyler is the president of AM Schuyler Insurance Agency, the largest insurers of summer camps in the country, probably the world. And it's not just a hobby, it's a passion, and it all goes back to Camp Witherwind. So I don't know, because it's been closed for so many years, Henry, if a lot of our viewers actually know anything about it. So this should be a fun podcast for us. So why don't you just tell us the history of the camp as you know it, and then your history and when you started, and we'll chat about it.
Great. I found out about Camp Witherwind when I was about 7 or 8 years old. My dad, who started the insurance business in 1920, was often telling me about camp and how it would be a great experience for me. I think I was 6, 7, but I didn't really fall in line with my dad's thinking because I kind of like life living in Honesdale until my dad said, you're not able to gather enough people to play in baseball games at home anymore. And if you'd like to play baseball, why don't you go to camp? And my dad took me to a number of camps, but he finally decided late in June, hard to believe, with the camp season a week away, to take my brother and me to Camp Witherwind, where we met the owner, whose name was David Olson, A-L-S-O-N, Olson, whose family was a partner with him in Witherwind. And my dad asked Dave Olson to show me around, my brother, my mother, and him. And when we were done, we fell in love with Witherwind just by looking at it and seeing the ball fields and the possibilities for me, especially me, to play baseball all the time. And my dad said to Dave Olson, is it too late to register? And Dave Olson said, it's not too late for the Schuyler boys. If we have to, we'll build a new bunk just for the two of you. And so there were 2 bunks at Witherwind when my brother at age 7 and I at age 8 went to Witherwind. There were 2 bunks, strangely, that had 9, not 8 in them. And those were the 2 bunks that had my brother and me. Camp then became something extraordinary for me. A little boy growing up in Honesdale, about 20 minutes away from Witherwind. My first memory of being there was when I came early with my parents. It was only 20 minutes away, and my mother made my cubby for me, and it still smelled of mothballs when she left. But I felt very, very alone because my parents drove their car out from the bunk where my mother had built my cubby, and I chased after them. I wanted them to come back and pick me up and take me home. And maybe a half an hour later, I sat on the porch. My parents did not come back, of course. And I had my baseball glove on, and I saw boys coming over the campus, pretty much already friends, because they'd been on a train from Brooklyn and Long Island, and then had a bus ride from Scranton to Witherwind. I saw them already friends, and they walked right by me, went on the porch, went right to their beds, and they did their cubbies, and they got their beds ready, and I felt really alone. And all I could do was just keep banging my glove, and like as if there were somebody that was throwing the baseball to me. And then somebody came out, and I don't remember who it was, but somebody came out. They had finished their work getting ready for Witherwind for the summer, an 8-week summer. And they asked me if I wanted to have a catch. And that's when life began, because I could throw the ball as hard. I could throw it in any way. I had a great way of playing, thank goodness. And then I started to feel part of it. And it was that first day that that baseball catch really gathered all of my positive energies to say, thank you, Dad and Mom, for bringing me to camp, and in particular, Camp Witherwind.
So what's so interesting for those of you who are watching this is Honesdale, Pennsylvania is a town in Northeast Pennsylvania in Wayne County. And Wayne County, Pennsylvania currently is the home to 35 sleepaway camps. And Henry actually grew up in the town of Honesdale, not the Mecca of sending children to 8-week or even 7-week summer camps. Most of the camps up in that area, the kids came from, like Henry said, from the New York metropolitan area, being Long Island and Manhattan and Brooklyn and sometimes Philadelphia and Baltimore. But not a lot of Henry's neighbors would have been going to a camp. It just wasn't kind of what you did. So the fact that his parents dropped him off at camp could very easily, for an 8-year-old, make that transition harder than if you were just dropped off at the bus stop or dropped off at the train station and a whole bunch of people are going together. Even if you feel a little sad, you're gonna play the game a little bit, not let them see that you're homesick. Henry, tell us, if you would, the history of Witherwind as you know it, when it was founded. Was that the founding family? How long did they own it? What's the roots of the camp?
What I know about it, David, is that Witherwind was originally in Connecticut. I'm not sure the year, but it was likely in the early 40s. It was in Connecticut for a period of time, and then it went to a camp in Wayne County called Indian Head Camp. So Indian Head Camp, before it was Indian Head Camp, was really Camp Witherwind. I think it was for a year or two, and the owners moved. The owners were Dave Olson and Ernestine Van Royen, who were partners in Connecticut, and then at Indian Head, and then they found a wonderful spot in Waymart, Pennsylvania, and that's when Witherwind really took off. And I was there probably in the late 1940s, and by then it was mature, and it had really found its stride because it was brother-sister, which at the time was a little more common than it is today. But brother-sister meant that there were separate campuses, separate waterfronts, and so in order for us to find our way to the girls' camp, we had to go about 1/8 of a mile. Everything was boys separate from girls separate. And I think for me, that was very important because I just loved to play without having anybody watch me until I got good enough that I wanted to play in front of the girls. And that didn't happen for a few years later. But Witherwind continued until 1967. I think that's right. And there was no heir apparent. There were no children of the Olsons that wanted to be involved, nor Ernestine Van Royen. And so they decided they would sell it. And I remember Mrs. Van Royen took a trip when I was in the Army in the Republic of China, and she asked if she could meet. We had dinner together. And she said she had just sold Witherwind, and she hoped that I, as an alumnus, would approve of it. She sold it for $250,000 for about 1,000 acres and 2 lakes. And then it went to another camp that was not at all like Witherwind. And that, I think, was the time that Witherwind really ended. But it didn't end. It didn't end for quite a few of us who loved it and made a major difference, just like camps do today. But that difference then took form in an alumni session that we had in New York. And I remember how much fun that was. There were maybe over 100 of us, and we just had such a good time that we wanted to do it again and again, but we didn't. As we got older, it became more difficult. Witherwind has had a really a cherished history because it was a wonderful place for sports, and the people who went there included famous athletes because the head counselor of the boys' camp was Al Badane. Al Badane at the time was very well known. He was the head basketball coach at Erasmus Hall High School, and he was the head counselor for as many years as I was there and more. He was somebody that I knew, whose nickname for anybody who went to Erasmus Hall, that could be Barbara Streisand or some other very famous people. He was known as the Fox. He was a very clever person, and he knew how to stimulate young boys like me to play basketball, to play baseball. And he attracted Billy Cunningham of the Philadelphia 76ers at the time, Erasmus Hall High School in North Carolina. He attracted Johnny Red Lee. Johnny Lee was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and still, if I had my cover of Johnny Red Lee, I would show it to you. Johnny Red Lee took a liking to me and helped me to build confidence in my basketball ability. But it was Al Badane who really set the tone. And for anybody who has a Witherwind history, they'll remember him. He invited me to be his assistant in his head counselor shack That was for 8 weeks. It was fascinating to me for many reasons because I really got to know him. And as a famous basketball person, I just felt this glow all the time. We shared a bathroom in the shack, so that when I was in the bathroom, I would lock him out. When he was in the bathroom, he would lock me out. But the fun of it all, I think, was that if it weren't for Witherwind, if it weren't for those 11 years that I spent there, if it weren't for the people that I met, the socialization that I learned, being a country boy with lots of city kids around me and feeling I could compete. If it weren't for that, I think that my life would be much, much different, and not as good, not as fulfilling, not as cherished, not as promising, I think. And I think my mom and dad were so proud of me because I did take Witherwind and camp so seriously, and I loved it. I couldn't wait to go back every year.
How many years were you a camper and how many years were you on staff?
I was a camper for 9 years and I was on staff for 2. I loved the camper part. I wasn't as keen in the counselor part, but the 1 year or the 8 weeks I spent with Albadane, those were wonderful. Those were wonderful times. About the 8 weeks in a period. Witherwind typically had boys for a longer period than the girls. The boys who just loved to play sports. At the time, interestingly, it was all baseball, basketball. Thank goodness for me. But then we had choices. It was riflery or tennis. I mean, tennis was not very popular. And it was arts and crafts and nature. You had a choice of those. So that was just to fill it in. Look at what's changed and look how popular some of the things that we don't look at as sports, but are adjunct to it. And those are things that Witherwind probably would be doing today. But when it ended in 1967, I think that's the right time, when it ended, a lot of the staff, a lot of the campers went to a camp called Starlight in Starlight, Pennsylvania. And that's one of the reasons that I think I've found a continuing interest in seeing what's going on at Starlight, because David has honored me with constant pictures, photographs, and postcards. My walls are loaded with Witherwind memorabilia. Thank you, David.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Did you have separate dining rooms as well? Boys and girls separate dining rooms?
No, that was because the dining room was the former carousel. It was an amazing building built for a carousel. And then when it was bought by Witherwind, by the Olsons and Mrs. Van Royen, it was turned into a dining room. So it was separated, but only by a lane between where the boys and the girls both sat. But the boys couldn't go to the girls couldn't go to the boys. In that respect, it was separate, but it was the same kitchen, one serving staff, but under one amazing building, which is still there today, formerly a carousel.
And did you have a theater program as well? Did you guys do plays?
That we did, and that's a story that has affected me because I did think that I had a good singing voice because my music teacher in high school, in Honesdale High School, told me that. Her name was Bessie Caulfield, and she liked my voice and said, "Henry, you should pursue it because it's got something that maybe is special." So when I went to camp, I think it was the second year I was there, I auditioned for a part in a play called Oklahoma, and the part I auditioned for was Curly, and when I still remember it, I was trying to sing the part of Curly, and Sam Cooper was playing the piano, and he gave me facial recognition that I was singing well, and so I turned it up. I started to think, okay, I'm a boy from the country. Curly's from the country. He's from Oklahoma. I'm going to sing from the deepest part of me, and I gave it all I had, and I didn't get the part. The impact was I never tried out again anytime. High school, college, law school, never tried out for a play. And the result was that today I founded something that's called Harmony in the Woods. And it's a wonderful place for people to learn and to hear, to listen, and to do the kinds of things that I could not do, but I give them a chance. So I'm making up for my lack of success trying to play Curly.
Henry, one rejection, and you don't audition again for the rest of your life?
Yeah, weakness. I need another session. Bring me back. Bermuda
Well, it's a good, it's a
Starlight.
good, it's a good, it's a good thing you didn't pursue a career in acting because you get a lot of no's before you ever before you get a yes.
That's true. That's true. I just couldn't take it. I was just not ready to be taken. But I'm making up for it, David.
Yes, I know you are. So, do you know, you may not even know this, but With a Wind, WITH-A-WIND, not sort of your typical camp name in any kind of realm. Do you know where the name came from?
No, no, I don't. No,
Little kind of a fascinating thought because it's not obviously there were a lot of Native American names of camps to begin with,
right,
or
right,
Camp Starlight's located in Starlight, Pennsylvania, and another camp
right.
that we featured on this series. Camp Belgrade was in North Belgrade, Maine, kind of simple stuff. But With a
Right.
Wind is kind of an interesting name for
Yeah, yeah. It's a question that I think makes me feel that over the 9 years, 11 years, my brother was there 14 years. Over that time, why didn't we ever ask?
right.
Why didn't we ever say it's with the? No, it's with a wind. And where did that come from? I don't know. Maybe somebody who's watching this podcast will say, you know what? I can tell you where it came from, but I don't know what it is. It was
Well,
blue and gold. We had blue shirts and gold shirts. We had combinations of blue and gold. Our alma mater was the Cornell alma mater. We had plays. We had sings. We gave all we had. We had wonderful counselors, Juilliard students who helped to train us. Camp is an amazing place.
did you have a form of Olympics or color war? What was the competition at the end of the year, or
We
did
had
it go
color
throughout the whole
war.
summer?
Blue against the gold, very serious, of course. Camp is very serious. I was good in baseball. I was really good in basketball too, but I was not a good runner. I still remember a counselor came up to me and said, "You got the leg, you got the home run leg. You got to use all your talent." I said, "I'll give it everything I have," but I couldn't. I just didn't have the legs to do it. So when it was over, I remember his name, and he said to me, "You know what? The question is not whether you won; it's did you have a good time." So I thought I didn't have a good time, but it was still fun. It was still fun.
And was your color war just 5 or 6 days, or did it go throughout the summer like some camps do?
5 or 6 days. Yeah, 5 or 6 days. And of course, the break was always fun. And after I had, I think I was working in a law firm for the summer. I was a student and I couldn't go to camp anymore. Counselors who were heads of the color war came to see me at home, and we worked through music and we listened to lots of great tunes. And together, I got the vicarious feeling that I was still at camp because I was helping do the color war. Color war was a big thing at camp then, so it's changed, of course. The word war isn't used as often. It's Olympics and others, but Witherwind had two teams until 1 year. They had three: blue, gold, and white. And never was it a combination with the girls' camp. It was always the boys' camp had their own, the girls' camp had their own. It was sometimes fierce in the way we competed, but I think it was an honorable experience. And sing was the major event at the end. If you won sing, the chances are that you probably would win color war.
So that's what I've always found so fascinating about camp, right? We're sitting here and you're going back in your memories to the 40s and 50s, and I was baseball and I was basketball and this coach, and we played hard.
Right.
And it came down to singing
Yeah.
songs,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Learning the lyrics to songs
Yes.
that support whatever your team was.
Right.
And guess what happens, Henry? What happens when you lose sing? What happens to boys when they lose sing?
Yeah.
They cry, don't they?
We usually do. Yeah, we cry more because we've lost sing, where we've rehearsed and we feel such a connection to each other. And even though I couldn't sing, I sang it, and it was almost spiritual. And when it was over, you really wanted to win, and it wasn't announced till the next morning, so that you had to wait. And then you're right, you were very, it was sad.
So one of the camps the camp that I started at that we featured, Camp Belgrade, we had something called Songfest, which was basically sing, and it happened on the Saturday night of visiting day because our color war, Beaver Eagle, went from beginning of the summer all the way to the end. Every week there was an event,
Wow.
and then there was something at the end, which is part of the podcast. But what happened is that you'd have, 150 boys split into two teams, and they would go through sing, and there would be a winner, and then there would be losers, and the losers would be crying in front of their parents, and it kind of ruined visiting day. So after many, many years, they decided, you know what? We're not going to do Songfest anymore during visiting day, because parents don't want to see their little boys crying because they lost an event.
That's learning the hard way, David.
Right.
That's when you know that you didn't do the right thing, and that's the hard way. Witherwind was also different, I think, because it invited parents to be there. There were parents who stayed the whole summer. There were bunks for parents. It was hotel-like. They could eat in the same dining room. But it wasn't something that most of the campers enjoyed. They didn't want to have their fathers or mothers watching them. But there were visiting weeks like there are today, but it was a little more important than it is today.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. We haven't talked about that before, but a number of the camps, Harley Mitchell and Witherwind, did have housing, and parents could come anytime they want and spend a weekend. Where now, visiting day is one day, and it's 5 or 6 hours, and that's it. Even in a 7-week summer, even though when you went, it was 8 weeks.
8 weeks, and today there's an emphasis on not having parents come to camp, right. and the whole idea of visiting day has changed. But for us, it was sometimes really fun, because some of the parents were actors. Harvey Lembeck, I remember, with Sergeant Bilko came, and we had counselor parent softball games, and that was fun. So we look forward to it, but not as a camper. As a camper, you wanted to be private. In fact, I remember somebody saying to me, if you really treasure the relationship with me, don't come to camp, because I want to be able to succeed and fail on my own. I don't want you to see me. I love you and I want you to be with me, but please let me learn how to be successful and how to fail without you seeing it. And I'll figure it out. I'll figure that out. Happened to be my son.
Did you have sort of a big brother program there? Like when you were that 8-year-old kid, did they assign like an older kid? Do you have any memories of somebody kind of taking you under their wing?
Yeah, these are all good ideas that you've learned, David, through your career, and which continues. No, there wasn't that experience. It was your counselor, and you had two. You were 8 in a bunk, and 2 counselors. That was standard, and then a group leader, and then a head counselor. And that was during my time, and I think that continued for quite a while. But Witherwind was also known for its ability to entertain other camps. It was not free of going to other camps. It wanted to show that it had successful people, including in sing and in certain ways in presentation. It wanted to show. So it worked well with the local schools, and it had competition on basketball courts. And so in that respect, I think it had a sense of community. It wanted to be involved with the local schools. And it was wise at a very early time. And of course, that's evolved and become that. If you were listening to or watching this podcast and you had a year or two, and I can tell you there are some people that I know who went to Witherwind, who are in camp today as owners, who do remember the beauty of Witherwind. Most of it all is the same as it is today. And that is the best part of camp, is being with boys and girls and your counselors. And if you remember anything about camp today, for me, and I'm sure I'm typical of many, it's the great moments you had with your other fellow campers. I know a person who went to Witherwind, who's now an ophthalmologist. And when he first found me a few years ago, he said, "Hank Schuyler, Witherwind's greatest third baseman." That's the way he remembered me. Right. And just the way that when you get together today, most of the conversation is, "Where'd you go to camp?" And right away I said, "Witherwind." I said, "Where's that? I've never heard of that." But if there were a moment to find a Witherwind person, and I found that person, right away we have a connection that's as much a bond as there could be in anything else. Occupation, camp is the most important. What do you do? Where do you live? Camp is the one that really binds people. And that was Witherwind. That was Witherwind. Right. And now, of course, it's Starlight and other great camps that serve children in ways where they're emotionally, physically affected forever.
Happy camp. Yeah. Happy campers. And you know what, Henry, I think that to use a term that's very modern day, children are at their most authentic self when they're at camp,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Because whoever you are during those 10 months at home, and
Right.
whatever that positive, negative, you know, I don't want to use the word baggage, but whoever you are, when you go to camp,
Yeah.
be anyone you want to be.
It's a very good point, David. And from that little boy who sat on the porch and just started to bang in his fist, the glove, bang the fist. What would have happened if I had not found someone who wanted to throw the ball to me? I would have chased after my parents. I would have found a way. It
Right.
was, if I wasn't up to that as an 8-year-old, I wasn't up for it yet. I thought I was going to be the best. And I learned quickly that there was so much to learn and so much that I learned how to listen, but I learned how to play. And play is not just sports, but play is the social part. And to be a good listener and to let other people guide you. I mean, boys and girls from Erasmus and Midwood and all the different great places that boys and girls went to during the other season. I didn't do that. I was in a public school in Honesdale. I went home in public school and I wore the clothes that I had learned how to wear from other boys and girls from the metropolitan area. Took 2 days and I had to take them off. I didn't look right. And yet I felt that I was really proud of what I was doing, and not in any snooty way. But I was a lucky boy to go to camp.
Right. And I know, Henry, in the way that he and his children, Amy and Jeffrey, run AM Skyer, they insure houses and life and cars and all that. But I know the favorite part of their business is the summer camp industry.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
and you certainly would not have felt this way if you did not go to camp yourself. You couldn't have.
Absolutely, David. And it was my dad and mom that made that happen. My dad had 10 camps that he felt were relationships, all in Wayne County. Today we have 900 camps. They're all over the world.
So your dad did, so Skyer, when you were a little boy, your dad had local camps, but about 10 of them, that was it, had not sort of
10.
branched out outside of the
No,
metropolitan,
No.
that area.
no, my dad really had 10, and I remember which they were, because when I came home after 10 years away, my dad was very happy that he had 10, but it wasn't until I met Ben Applebaum that I really got to understand that there was an opportunity for me beyond just Wayne County. And now we're all over the world. And a lot of that, I think, is something that I I fantasize that I could talk to my dad. And I would say to my dad, I know you want to know how your mom is, how your mom, not your mom, your wife, my mom. I know you want to know other things, but Dad, there's one thing you have to know. Your grandchildren are in your business. This is 103rd year, and we insure so many wonderful camps. The best part of our lives is going to camp and feeling it, just feeling what goes on and the impact that it has. And that's Witherwind. That's what, I give credit to Witherwind. It was great. It was the best for me. And I'm sure that there are children who say the same now. And maybe 30 or 40 years from now, there'll be somebody who will say, you know what, my time at Starlight, I was extremely, really fortunate. And it was a happy time, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's amazing. As beautiful as the background is in that.
And you could not have been a better guest. And now I do want to thank you for this, because we got a great insight into what Witherwind was. And I know, because we've known each other for 25 years, how you talk about the place, but we've never had the opportunity for me to really hear and listen to the stories of how impactful it was in your life. And because it's my podcast, the way that we're going to end this is you have to sing the Witherwind alma mater, because that's the way we end these. So whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm not ready. I'm a bad curly. No, what I would do is ask, as I do now, I ask others to sing and I encourage that. I put them on stage. I have a terrible voice.
So say it, because sometimes say the words to it, because what I want to know is we're going to try to figure out whether we can figure out if Witherwind, the name, came from the alma mater. What are the words? Do you remember the words?
No, I don't. But no, I don't. I would
I
have to
don't-
really.
I don't
But you know,
believe, I
David,
don't
it's the
believe
reason-
you remember, Henry, you remember everything.
Great memory, right? But I told you the curly story, and that's what happened. It purged all those positive instincts that I wish I'd had. But I can be helpful to others so that they can sing their version of the Witherwind alma mater.
Was
Let's
there a-
reprise. I'll do some study. There are lots of Witherwinders that I'm going to tell you about, and you'll go to them, and we'll have a little Witherwind reprise, and we'll do it. If you choose, we'll do a podcast about that, and I'll hum.
Sounds great.
All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you for doing this. And thank you everybody for joining us. You can find more episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else that you like to watch podcasts. Thank you, Henry Schuyler, for talking to us about Witherwind.
It's an honor. Thank you, David.
Take a moment to shine.